Good morning, A pushers. So here's what we're going to look at. I'm just going to briefly go over the rubric for the AP DBQ rubric. And it's different than the one you may have done in world history last year, because last year it was just a very different test. So this is the AP DBQ rubric um, that is going to be used to grade your DBQs when you begin writing them, which, hint, hint, winky, winky, you will very soon. So the first part, very much like the LEQ rubric, you get 1 point for a thesis. Again, the thesis has to be at the beginning or at the end of the essay, and it has to be very explicit. It can't be an embedded thesis or an implied thesis or anything like that. It has to be very, very explicit right there. You get 1 point for contextualization, where you're just kind of setting the stage of what the prompt is about, right? You're giving background information. You're giving the larger view of what's happening that's impacting that moment. Again, a good rule of thumb is that the context is either in the opening or in the second paragraph of the essay. It can be at the end. There's no real hard, fast rules about where the context is, unlike the thesis, where there is definitely a very, very specific rule about where the thesis is. For a context, there's no real hard, fast rule, but just generally, it's better if the context, the contextualization piece, is somewhere in the beginning of the essay. And then this is where it begins to change. It's where the evidence, because obviously you're using documents. You have documents that have been presented to you to help you write this essay. The evidence is you get a possibility of 3 points. You get 1 point if you use at least 3 of the documents to address the prompt, okay? And when you use 3 of the documents, you're not just merely quoting from the documents, right? You're not just given long quotes from the documents. Do not do that. Ideally, you want to paraphrase what the document is saying, because when you paraphrase it, one, it saves you time and it's less writing usually, but it also shows the reader that you understand what the document is about when you can paraphrase it. So avoid using long quotes in the documents. So first point, you use at least 3 documents to support the prompt, to support your thesis. You get 2 points if you use at least 6 documents. And again, you're not just quoting or mentioning the document. You're actually using the document in a way to support the prompt and your thesis. Do not use long quotes. Again, paraphrase is the very best way to use these. So 1 point if you use at least 3 documents, 2 points if you use at least 6 documents. Okay, if you use 4 or you use 5 documents, you get 1 point. 2 points if you use at least 6 documents. You get 1 point, you get an additional 3rd point if you use at least 1 piece of additional evidence beyond the document. So you're adding something to the document. You're bringing in outside information that's not included specifically in that document. If you can do that, for good rule of thumb is say at least 2 documents. If you can do it for more, that is bueno for you. Outside information that's not specifically mentioned in the document, that's related to that document. So for instance, if the document is something in the Declaration of Independence, okay, usually you're just going to get a excerpt, just a short outtake from the document. So let's say you're dealing with the Declaration of Independence, and it just deals with the preamble. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary, and all you're getting is just all you're using is just that preamble is what you're given. If you can bring in other information that's somewhere else in the Declaration of Independence, that would be outside information. If you can bring in information that's not included in the Declaration of Independence, but is somehow related to the Declaration of Independence, to that document. So in this instance, if we're talking about the Declaration of Independence again, maybe an outside piece of information that you could bring in would be, maybe you could bring in that they were meeting in Philadelphia because of concerns that if they were meeting elsewhere, they could be captured. You could also bring in the idea that a lot of the ideas that Jefferson uses in the Declaration of Independence were Enlightenment period ideas. All of that would be outside information. So anything that's not directly in that document, you can bring in, and that's outside information. If you can do that, again, a good rule of thumb is at least 2 documents that you have outside information, you get a third additional point for evidence. Okay, outside information is really, really important. Okay, and the outside information has to be different than anything you included in the context. Okay, you can't double dip on points. You can't get a point for using information in the context and then use that exact same information for outside evidence. Okay. And then for analysis, there's 2 points. For the first point of an analysis, for at least 3 of the documents, you give you explain the point of view of the author, or the purpose of the author, or the context of the document, or the intended audience. Okay, if you can do that for at least 3 of the documents, give context, point of view, purpose, or intended audience. If you can provide that information, and it doesn't have to be real elaborate. You can just say the intended audience for this document was blah, 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 and then explain very briefly why that, how you know that was the intended audience. Or you can say the context of this document is da, 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 and explain why that's the context. Point of view, the author's point of view is whatever, and it gives some explanation for that. Okay, you have to do that for at least 3 documents. Okay, if you can do that for 3 of the documents, you get the point for analysis. Okay, and again, you can just make it real explicit. You can mix and match one document. You can talk about point of view. Next document, you can talk about purpose. The next document, you can talk about context. Right? You don't have to use the same ones over and over and over again. And you don't have to do all of them. You just have to do one: point of view, purpose, context, audience. Okay, it's known as CAP. Context is CAP. Audience is A. P would be point of view. The other P would be purpose. CAP. CAPP. Context, audience, purpose, point of view. Okay, you can do that for 3 documents. You get a point. And then the second point for analysis and reasoning is the unicorn point, which is just like on the LAQ, where you're expanding the scope of view, you're expanding the scope of the prompt, right? You're going beyond what the prompt is asking. Again, the easiest way to do this is to do some sort of comparison contrast between a similar event at a different time in history in a different part of the world, or a different part of the country, right? Where you're just expanding the scope of the argument. Don't worry, just like on the LAQ, don't worry about getting the CAP. Worry about getting these easy points: the thesis, the context. 3, you should be able, in your sleep, you should be able to get 2 points, right? You've got the documents. Don't quote them, paraphrase them, use them to support your prompt and thesis. You should, in your sleep, you should be able to get at least 2 points. The third point should be, again, fairly simple. You're just adding in outside evidence that's not included specifically in that document. And then it should be pretty easy to get at least one of the analysis points here by doing CAP on at least 3 of the documents, right? If you just follow the formula here, you should be able to get at least 5, or excuse me, out of 6. This is out of 7 points. At least 6 out of 7 points. 5 you should be able to get. If you can get 5 points on this, that's a pretty good essay. All right. Good luck, Panthers. If you need any questions, problems, help, or conundrums, make sure you let me know. Good luck.